This morning, the man accused of planning the murder of Tupac Shakur is set to stand trial as prosecutors look to prove Dwayne Davis orchestrated the drive-by shooting.
For 30 years, Tupac Shakur's death has remained one of music's biggest mysteries. Many questions were never answered. Fans were left wondering what really happened that night in Las Vegas. But now, new details are bringing fresh attention to the case. Some of these details challenge what people believed for decades. They also raise new questions. Was the truth hidden all along? Did investigators miss something important? And after 30 years of rumors, silence, and unanswered questions, could we finally be closer to discovering what really happened to Tupac Shakur? Join us in this video as we reveal the details. Tupac Shakur, mystery finally solved. After 30 years, Tupac Shakur's death remains one of the most talked-about assassinations in music history. On September 7, 2026, the world will mark 30 years since the rapper was shot in Las Vegas. Tupac was only 25 years old, yet he had already become a huge name in music, film, and popular culture. His songs spoke about poverty, violence, family, racism, love, anger, and life on the streets. Because of his strong voice and powerful personality, his death left a gap that many people believe was never filled. The night of the shooting began with a boxing match. Tupac traveled to Las Vegas to watch Mike Tyson face Bruce Seldon at the MGM Grand. After Tyson won, Tupac left the building with Suge Knight, the head of Death Row Records. The two men were traveling in a BMW when another vehicle pulled up beside them. Gunfire suddenly broke out. Several bullets struck Tupac. Knight was also injured, but he survived. Tupac was rushed to hospital, where doctors tried to save him. His condition remained serious for several days. On September 13th, he died from his injuries. The assassination immediately raised questions. Who ordered the attack? Who fired the gun? Why was Tupac targeted? Was the shooting connected to gang violence, the music industry, or the growing fight between the East Coast and West Coast? For years, nobody had a final answer. The case became a cold case, while theories continued to spread. Everything changed decades later when Dwayne "Keffy D" Davis became the only person charged in connection with the assassination. Prosecutors say Davis played a major role in the attack. They do not have to prove that he was the man who pulled the trigger if they can prove that he helped organize the assassination. That difference is very important. A person can be accused of assassination because of what they planned or ordered, even when another person carries out the actual shooting. The case against Davis is closely connected to Orlando Anderson. Anderson was a member of the South Side Compton Crips and was also Davis's nephew. Earlier on the night of Tupac's death, Tupac and people around him reportedly came across Anderson inside the MGM Grand. A fight broke out, and Anderson was beaten. This incident is believed to have created anger and a desire for revenge. Prosecutors believe Davis and others decided that Tupac should pay for what happened. The shooting came only a short time after the fight, making the connection an important part of the case. Davis has also made the situation more difficult for himself by speaking about the assassination over the years. He has discussed the case in interviews and wrote about it in his book, Compton Street Legend. He has also spoken with investigators. These statements could become some of the strongest evidence against him because they come from Davis himself. Prosecutors can point to his words and argue that he knew what was happening and was involved in the plan. The defense can offer another explanation. Davis could argue that he exaggerated his role to make himself look important. Someone may tell a dramatic story because they want attention or respect. The jury will have to decide whether his statements were honest accounts or stories meant to build his image. That question could become one of the central battles in court. The case is also important because of what happened after Tupac's death. Orlando Anderson was later assassinated in Los Angeles in 1998. Other people connected to the events also died. This added more mystery to an already complicated story. It also showed how serious the conflict around Tupac had become. Another major issue is the old East Coast versus West Coast rivalry. Tupac was one of the biggest names linked to the West Coast, while the notorious B.I.G. was one of the leading figures on the East Coast. Their rivalry became a major part of hip-hop history. Some people have claimed that Tupac's assassination was part of that larger battle. However, the case against Davis focuses more on the fight involving Anderson and the revenge that allegedly followed. The prosecution's story is therefore much more direct. It points to a personal conflict, a gang connection, and a decision to strike back. After almost 30 years, the court will now have to decide whether that story can be proved with enough evidence to support a conviction. With Davis facing trial, could the witnesses finally reveal what really happened that night? Stay tuned for more. The witnesses, theories, and Tupac's lost future. The upcoming trial could bring several important people back into the story of Tupac Shakur's death. One of the most important names is Suge Knight. Knight was inside the car with Tupac when the gunman opened fire. He was close enough to experience the attack himself and survived it. Because of this, his memory of that night could be valuable to investigators and prosecutors. Knight has also been mentioned as a possible witness. It is still unclear whether he will actually testify, but his appearance would attract major attention. He is currently serving a long prison sentence in California for an unrelated case. His history with Tupac and death row records makes him one of the most important surviving figures from that period. Other possible witnesses have also been mentioned. Oscar Goodman, who later became mayor of Las Vegas, is among the names connected to the case. Nevada Governor Joe Lombardo has also been mentioned because he was working with the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department around the time of the shooting. Greg Kading, a former Los Angeles police detective, could also play an important role. Kading has said that Davis gave information about his involvement during an investigation. If he appears in court, prosecutors could use his testimony to explain what Davis allegedly told investigators. Davis's previous statements will likely receive close attention throughout the trial. For years, he has talked about the events surrounding Tupac's death. His public interviews and his book have given investigators material to examine. The prosecution can argue that his different statements show that he knew what happened and was involved. The defense may try to show that Davis was simply talking himself up. The jury will have to decide which explanation is more believable. The long delay also creates another problem. Almost 30 years have passed since the shooting. People remember events differently as time goes by. Some witnesses have died, while others may no longer remember every detail clearly. Evidence that could have been useful decades ago may also be harder to find today. Even so, prosecutors believe there is enough information to take the case to court. The trial could last for weeks or even months because of the number of people and issues involved. The court will also have to deal with the many stories that have surrounded Tupac's death. One of the most famous claims is that Sean "Diddy" Combs was somehow connected to the assassination. That idea has appeared in documentaries and online discussions. However, the explanation presented in the discussion strongly rejects the claim. There is no established evidence in the case showing that Combs ordered Tupac's assassination. The focus remains on the events involving Anderson, Davis, and the people around them. The case also brings attention to what Tupac might have become if he had survived. He was still very young when he died, and his career was moving quickly. If he had lived, his views could have changed as he grew older. He might have become more involved in politics, business, film, or social work. He might also have changed his approach to music. Nobody can know for certain. One possible comparison is Kendrick Lamar. Kendrick has used his music to discuss race, politics, violence, inequality, and Black life in America. Tupac could have taken a similar path and become an even bigger voice in those areas. There was also a chance that Tupac could have helped calm the East Coast and West Coast conflict. He and Nas had reportedly discussed meeting in Las Vegas to find a way to reduce the tension. Both men had enough influence to encourage other artists to follow their lead. Tupac's death happened before that plan could move forward. His assassination therefore affected more than one family or one music career. It changed the direction of hip-hop at a time when the culture was already under heavy pressure. Now, after 3 decades of questions, the court will have a chance to examine the evidence against Davis. The trial cannot bring Tupac back, and it may not answer every mystery, But it could finally establish what role Davis played in the events that ended the life of one of the most influential rappers the world has ever known. If Tupac's assassination was not as simple as it first appeared, what hidden evidence could finally reveal what really happened that night? Let's delve deeper. The evidence that stayed hidden. For almost 30 years, the assassination of Tupac Shakur remained without a clear answer. He was shot in Las Vegas on September 7, 1996, after leaving the MGM Grand with Suge Knight. Tupac was badly wounded and died 6 days later. From that moment, the case became one of the biggest unsolved assassinations in music. Police questioned people, searched for leads, and followed different stories, but the case never reached a clear ending. One major problem was silence. People who may have seen what happened were not willing to talk. Some were afraid of the people involved. Others gave different stories at different times. Some later said they could not remember what they had seen. This made the investigation very difficult. The shooting happened in a busy part of Las Vegas, yet getting a clear story from people who were nearby was still a problem. Fear was believed to be a major reason. In the street world around the case, speaking to police could bring serious trouble. A person could be worried about being attacked or putting their family in danger. Staying quiet could seem like the safer choice. Because of this, investigators were left with many unanswered questions. They needed to know what happened before the shooting, where the attackers came from, who was inside the car, and where the car went afterward. But without strong witness accounts, it became difficult to put all the pieces together. Evidence also became a problem. The BMW Tupac was riding in was taken after the shooting, but questions have been raised about how carefully it was examined. A car involved in an assassination can contain many clues. Bullet holes can show where shots came from. The damage can help experts understand the path of the bullets. Blood, fingerprints, gunpowder, and other small marks can also provide useful information. But some of these questions were never fully answered. Surveillance cameras created another problem. Las Vegas had many cameras, but not all the useful footage was collected or available. Some recordings were reportedly too poor to identify people or cars. Other footage was said to be missing. This meant investigators could not simply watch the whole night from beginning to end. Police reports also contained details that did not always match. Different reports could give different times or different descriptions of what happened. Some information reportedly appeared in early reports but was not carried into later files. When details change, investigators must work out which version is correct. That becomes even harder when many years have passed. For nearly 3 decades, these problems helped keep the case alive without giving the public a final answer. Then, attention returned to old evidence. Claims emerged that important material connected to the case had been overlooked. One reported discovery involved a sealed envelope that had remained with old case records. The material inside was said to have never been fully tested or properly added to the main investigation. If that claim is true, it means investigators may have had another piece of evidence without understanding its importance. Another reported development involved an old audio recording. The recording was said to contain 2 men talking about the shooting soon after it happened. They allegedly discussed details about the attack and mentioned people connected to it. A recording made so close to the assassination could be important. But before it can prove anything, experts would need to confirm that it is real. They would also need to identify the voices and make sure the recording was not changed. Modern technology has also given investigators new ways to study old evidence. Computers can improve poor video. Experts can examine pictures frame by frame. Phone records can be studied in greater detail. Voice experts can compare recordings. Ballistic experts can rebuild the movement of bullets. These tools were not as advanced in 1996. One area that received new attention was the white Cadillac, believed to have been involved in the shooting. Enhanced video was reportedly used to follow the vehicle around Las Vegas that night. If the footage is genuine, it could show where the car came from and where it went after the attack. It could also help investigators decide whether the shooting was planned. Another person also became important in the new theory. A man who did not appear to be part of the fight at the MGM Grand was reportedly seen watching the confrontation. He allegedly made a phone call after the fight, before disappearing into the crowd. Investigators had originally focused on the people directly involved in the fight. The background figure may not have seemed important at the time, but when old footage was examined again, his presence raised new questions. Who was he? Why was he watching? Who did he call? Where did he go afterward? Those questions could matter if his identity is ever confirmed. The case had been built around the people everyone could see. New evidence could force investigators to look at the people who stayed in the background. After so many years, even one small detail could change the entire picture. But every new claim must be tested carefully before it can be treated as fact. If the old evidence is pointing to more than a simple gang attack, could money, betrayal, and someone close to Tupac hold the missing answers? Let's find out. Money, betrayal, and the questions still left. The new questions surrounding Tupac's assassination go beyond the people who may have been at the shooting. They also involve the people around Tupac, his growing success, and the money connected to his career. One theory suggests that someone close to Tupac may have known important details about his movements. If a person knew where Tupac would be, what car he would use, and when he would leave the MGM Grand, that information could have been useful to someone planning an attack. This does not prove that anyone close to Tupac betrayed him. It simply creates a question that investigators would need to answer. Could someone inside his circle have given information to the attackers? Another question is whether Tupac was actually the intended target. The shooting has often been explained as revenge for the fight involving Orlando Anderson. But another theory suggests that the attack may have had a different purpose. It is possible that someone else in the car was the real target, or that the shooting was made to look like a gang attack. If criminals wanted investigators to believe one story, they could try to make the scene point in that direction. That is only a theory, but it shows why investigators may need to look at every part of the case again. Money is another major part of the story. By 1996, Tupac was no longer just a successful rapper. He was a major star whose name could make millions of dollars. His music was selling heavily. His movies were gaining attention. His image was known around the world. Death Row Records was also making a great deal of money from his work, but Tupac was becoming more independent. He wanted more control over his music, his money, and his future. He was reportedly thinking about leaving Death Row and starting his own label. That could have caused serious tension. If Tupac left, the company could lose one of its biggest sources of income. People who benefited from his contracts could also lose money. Tupac had started asking questions about his business deals. He wanted to know where his money was going. He had lawyers looking over his contracts and was considering changes. From Tupac's point of view, this may have been about taking control of his own life. But people who depended on his existing deals may have seen it differently. His relationship with Suge Knight was also complicated. Knight had helped Tupac leave prison in 1995 and brought him into Death Row Records. At first, the two worked closely together. Over time, however, Tupac wanted more freedom. He did not want to remain under another person's control. Knight was a powerful figure with a reputation for using fear and pressure. That made their business relationship difficult. Tupac was also caught in the middle of the East Coast and West Coast conflict. His feud with the notorious B.I.G. and Bad Boy Records became one of the biggest stories in hip-hop. The rivalry attracted huge attention. Record sales increased. Media coverage grew. Fans took sides. The problem was that the same conflict that made money also created danger. It placed artists, producers, bodyguards, and people around them in a tense environment. This raised another question. Did some people have a reason to keep the conflict going because it was profitable? That question alone does not prove that anyone wanted Tupac dead. It simply shows how money and violence were mixed together during that period. One of the most serious claims involves life insurance. It has been alleged that insurance policies worth millions of dollars were taken out on Tupac shortly before his death. The claim also says that Death Row Records was named as a beneficiary. If such documents exist, investigators would need to study them carefully. They would need to know who arranged the policies, when they were created, how much they were worth, who paid for them, and who would receive the money if Tupac died. The timing would also be important. Tupac was already facing danger in 1996. He had enemies and was involved in several conflicts. He was also reportedly considering major changes to his career. But life insurance by itself does not prove assassination. Companies can insure valuable employees or business partners for normal reasons. Therefore, investigators would need much more than the existence of a policy. They would need evidence showing that the policy was connected to a plan to assassinate him. The same rule applies to the betrayal theory. If Tupac's death was only one part of the mystery, what other secrets about his private life and final resting place were still waiting to be uncovered? Let's learn more. The secret side of Tupac Shakur and the search for the truth. For almost 30 years, Tupac Shakur's death has remained one of the biggest mysteries in music. He died on September 13, 1996, after being shot in Las Vegas 6 days earlier. But while the world spent years asking who assassinated him, another mystery was also growing. It was about what happened to Tupac's remains after his death. For many years, people believed that Tupac had been cremated and that his ashes had been scattered in different places. Some stories said his ashes were taken to the Pacific Ocean. Other stories placed them in California, Georgia, or South Africa. Then came even stranger claims. Some fans believed Tupac had secretly escaped and was living somewhere far away. Cuba, Africa, Malaysia, and other places were named. These stories continued because there was no clear public answer about where Tupac's remains had been kept. That changed during journalist Jeff Pearlman's research into Tupac's life. Pearlman spent years trying to understand the man behind the famous rapper. His search eventually took him to Lumberton, North Carolina, where Tupac's mother, Afeni Shakur, had owned a large property. Afeni bought the land in 2000, about 4 years after Tupac died. The property reportedly covered about 56 acres and included a large house surrounded by trees and gates. Afeni lived there for many years before her death in 2016. After she died, the property was reportedly left quiet and mostly untouched. During Pearlman's visit, he was shown around the land by Dante Powers, a relative of Afeni. While looking around, Pearlman reportedly noticed something unusual in the yard. There was a simple stone with Tupac's name carved into it. The name reportedly read Tupac Amaru Shakur. The discovery was surprising because the public had never been told about such a private memorial. It suggested that at least part of Tupac's remains may have been kept on the property instead of everything being scattered. Afeni was known for protecting her son's privacy and memory. Keeping the location secret would have helped the family avoid crowds, cameras, fans, and people looking for a place to make money. Tupac was already a worldwide star, so a public grave could easily have become a tourist attraction. The private location allowed his family to remember him without turning his final resting place into a public show. The discovery also gave another possible explanation for the many stories about Tupac's ashes. Some of his remains could have been scattered in different places, while another portion was kept privately. This means that different stories may have contained parts of the truth without giving the full picture. The reported grave also weakened the long-running stories that Tupac had secretly survived. If a private resting place connected to him existed, claims that he escaped and lived under another name became much harder to support. Still, the discovery did not answer every question about his death. Instead, it showed that important parts of his private life had remained hidden for decades. Pearlman's wider investigation went far beyond the question of Tupac's final resting place. He reportedly spent about 3 years speaking with people who knew Tupac at different stages of his life. Nearly 700 people were said to have shared memories, stories, and information. These included family members, childhood friends, teachers, actors, former associates, and people connected to the music business. Their stories helped create a fuller picture of Tupac. One important source was reportedly a former girlfriend from his school years. She gave Pearlman more than 100 letters written by Tupac. The letters showed a side of him that fans rarely saw. He wrote about love, sadness, fear, dreams, relationships, and loneliness. They showed that behind the strong rapper was a young man who wanted to be loved and understood. If Pearl Man's investigation revealed a side of Tupac the public barely knew, how did his troubled upbringing and powerful family legacy shape the battles that continued even after his death? Let's take a closer look. Tupac's roots and the battle over his legacy. Tupac Shakur grew up in a family with strong political and social beliefs. His mother, Afeni Shakur, had been involved with the Black Panther movement. Because of this, Tupac was exposed from an early age to ideas about racism, poverty, unfair treatment, freedom, and social change. These ideas later became an important part of his music. He did not only rap about money, fame, women, and street life. He also spoke about poor families, violence, police treatment, broken homes, and problems facing Black communities. His music often carried anger, but there was usually a deeper message underneath it. He wanted people to listen to the problems around them. His background also gave him a strong desire to stand for something bigger than himself. But as his fame grew, his life became much more complicated. He entered a world where music, money, violence, loyalty, friendship, and street politics often mixed together. His connection to Death Row Records placed him close to people and situations that were very different from the political world he had known growing up. This created a difficult conflict in his life. He could speak about peace and social problems while also becoming involved in fights and dangerous situations. He could be caring and thoughtful one moment and angry the next. People who knew him reportedly saw both sides. His private letters also showed that he struggled with love, rejection, loneliness, and the need to feel accepted. His public image made him appear strong and fearless, but his private writings showed that he also had fears and emotional pain. One painful event that reportedly affected him deeply was the accidental death of 6-year-old Kaid Walker Teal. A gun connected to Tupac reportedly went off and caused the child's death. The incident was said to have stayed with him and later influenced some of his creative work. It showed how quickly violence could bring terrible consequences. His final years followed a similar pattern of pressure and danger. Tupac's confrontation with Orlando Anderson at the MGM Grand became an important part of the events surrounding his death. The fight happened only hours before Tupac was shot. It showed how quickly anger and conflict could turn into something much more serious. But Tupac's story did not end with his death. After Afeni Shakur died in 2016, another major struggle began over his estate and legacy. Afeni had spent years protecting her son's name, music, and business interests. After her death, responsibility for the estate reportedly went to Tom Whalley, a music industry executive who had worked with Tupac and had Afeni's trust. The arrangement later became controversial. Tupac's sister, Tupac Shakur, reportedly began questioning how the estate was being managed. By 2022, the disagreement had become a legal matter. Tupac reportedly accused Whalley of receiving more than $5.5 million in payments that she considered excessive. She also raised concerns about Tupac's personal belongings. These reportedly included cars, jewelry, gold records, clothing, and other items connected to his life. Some of the belongings were reportedly used in the "Wake Me When I'm Free" exhibition. Tupac questioned whether the family had properly approved their use. From her point of view, these objects were not simply valuable items. They were pieces of her brother's life and family history. Whalley rejected the accusations. He maintained that Afeni had trusted him to manage Tupac's business interests and that his work helped increase the value of the estate. He also argued that his efforts helped keep Tupac's name important around the world. What do you think is the actual cause of the assassination of Tupac Shakur? Share your thoughts in the comments section below. Thanks for watching. If the hidden secrets surrounding Tupac Shakur's final resting place, his private life, and the battle over his legacy caught your attention, please like, subscribe, and watch the next video for more shocking stories. See you there.